This is Fort Bragg, which is located in North Carolina. At first glance, it looks like a very comfortable and pleasant place, but there is one caveat. It is the largest military base in the United States. Today, about 50,000 military personnel are stationed at this base who live, study, and serve here. Next to the well-kept cottages and restaurants, you can see planes, radars, and military training grounds. Ask yourself, if just one military base looks like this, how much money does the U.S. invest in its military might? The answer is $800 billion. This is how much the United States spent on its defense in 2022. That's more than all NATO partners combined. Tanks, planes, ships, missiles, torpedoes, and satellites all protect the United States from external threats. But weapons are only part of the U.S. security complex. In this video, we will tell you how nature itself protects America from external threats, and does this country have weaknesses? You are on the Karo Show channel. Enjoy watching. The U.S. territory is very well protected by the oceans that surround its shores. Look at this map. The Pacific Ocean covers the shores of the United States in the west and the Atlantic Ocean in the east. If someone decides to attack America, he will immediately face a difficult test. The enemy will have to establish regular chains of supply of weapons, equipment, ammunition, food, and manpower across the oceans. Considering the presence of ultra-modern satellites and long-range weapons that can track down and destroy enemy targets thousands of kilometers away in real time, this makes the United States a difficult target for military intervention. Suppose the enemy succeeds. What would be waiting for him on the U.S. shores? Look at this table. It shows that the United States spends more on its defense in a year than Germany, France, Russia, Great Britain, India, South Korea, Japan, and Saudi Arabia combined. The U.S. spent $800 billion on its security in 2022. They have the most powerful military-industrial complex in the world. America is also the largest arms exporter on the planet. The U.S. makes its own fighter jets, tanks, missiles, and much more. As for the nuclear arsenal, the United States has the second largest nuclear potential after Russia. But here it should be noted that despite the fact that the number of warheads in the United States and Russia is approximately the same, America spends about $45 billion a year on their maintenance, while Russia spends only $8.5 billion a year on the same number. This says a lot about the state of the arsenals of both countries. Perhaps for this reason, or perhaps because of smaller populations and armies, neighboring countries in the north and south wish to coexist peacefully with the United States. Such security gives the U.S. an economic advantage over its enemies. Even during the Second World War, when the United States was conducting military operations in Europe and Asia, their enterprises continued to operate unhindered. Since a blitzkrieg is impossible in the United States, a potential rival must clearly understand that he will have to fight not only the army, but also all of America's industry. And not just America, the United States has one more trump card in its deck: NATO membership. And although it sometimes seems that it is the U.S. that protects Europe and finances its security, the statute of the alliance says that if the U.S. is attacked, its Canadian and European allies will have to stand up to America. These are about 30 other developed countries that could potentially help America financially and militarily. We have already said that the enemy of the United States must establish supply chains across the ocean. And what about the logistics in America? First, U.S. military logistics are reinforced by 72,000 kilometers, or almost 45,000 miles of highways. They are assisted by another 232,000 kilometers, or 144,000 miles of railway. Also useful are 15,500 private and 5,000 public airports. 300 sea and river ports are used for moving by water. Speaking of rivers, one of the key rivers is the Mississippi River. It connects the north and south of the country and also has many tributaries, which creates another logistics chain. Together, this creates a diversified logistics system that cannot be completely destroyed. And even attempting to damage it significantly would require an incredible amount of resources. Let's imagine that a potential adversary was able to seize a beachhead on one of the U.S. coasts. But now the enemy will have to fight with Mother Nature. The size and geography of the United States have given this country incredible landscape diversity. There are mountains, swamps, endless forests, and deserts. To the east, the country is protected by the Appalachian Mountains, and to the west, the Rocky Mountains serve as a natural barrier. To the north are the Great Lakes, which create another barrier. So we can only wish good luck to those military groups. who will have to travel thousands of miles to occupy American cities. As for the locals, they are unlikely to greet the invaders with flowers in their hands. The American people have more firearms in their hands than the U.S. Army itself has. And it is worth noting that the U.S. population is approximately 336 million people, making the United States the third most populous country after China and India. Worth mentioning Alaska. This strategically located state is a very important part of the United States defense system. Alaska is located on the northern border of Canada, which makes it a buffer zone for the United States against any potential invasion from the north, for example from Russia. There are military bases, strategic air defense systems, radars, and reconnaissance stations. It is in Alaska that military exercises are held every year in the Arctic climate. Imagine what the world would look like if Emperor Alexander II hadn't sold Alaska to the United States for $7 and $2 million. Write what you think about this in the comments. We have already discussed that the United States has a favorable geographical location, an excellent logistics system, a bunch of allies, and nuclear weapons to boot. But we have not yet remembered one of the main advantages of this state, self-sufficiency, in food, energy, and weapons. The U.S. has significant natural resources, which include agricultural land, oil, gas reserves, and mineral deposits. The U.S. economy relies on technological innovation to produce more with less time and resources. Also, the U.S. economy is diversified and not overly dependent on one particular sector. This means that even if one sector, such as agriculture or energy, declines, the economy will survive and continue to function. In this scenario, there are few countries that dare to oppose such a powerful rival. The United States identifies China, Russia, North Korea, and Iran as its main threats. But still, if China decides to attack the U.S., it will lose its biggest trading partner, which would literally destroy the Chinese economy. As for Russia, North Korea, and Iran, these countries are under strict sanctions, which sets them back in development many decades compared to the developed world. Under such conditions, in an open military conflict, these countries are doomed to failure. But what if the enemies could get what they want without military intervention? For a long time, wars have moved from the battlefield to cyberspace, because against such an enemy it is easier to wage war with the hands of hackers than with the hands of the army. In 2016, Russia interfered in the U.S. presidential election. Russian agents used social networks, Facebook and Twitter, to spread false information among voters. They created entire networks of fake accounts and groups that were supposedly controlled by the Americans, but in reality they were controlled by the Russians. These profiles spread misinformation aimed at stirring up political tensions and divisions among voters. This incident was successful for the Russians. The U.S. intelligence community estimates that in 2020 the Russians again tried to interfere in the election, but this time with no success. And in May 2021, a group of hackers called DarkSide carried out a cyber attack on the U.S. pipeline system, Colonial Pipeline. This pipeline network supplies 45% of the fuel consumed on the U.S. East Coast. As a result, the pipeline stopped working for several days, causing a massive shortage of fuel and panic among the population. Such attacks require less effort, while they cause serious damage to the state. To reduce the risk of cyber attacks on the economy, the government and the private sector are investing in cybersecurity infrastructure. For example, in May 2022, Elon Musk said that the Russians carried out a cyber attack on his Starlink company because of its role in the Russian war against Ukraine. But one software update was enough to help the company survive. In general, the United States resembles an indestructible fortress, both geographically and economically. As for the political component, although democracy can be vulnerable at times, as happened in 2016 during a cyber attack, it is still able to effectively defend itself. So it is unlikely that it will be possible to change the democratic system and thus gain control over the United States. Based on all this information, it can be said that the United States is better to have as an ally than as an enemy. Economically independent, geographically protected, and politically stable, they are the standard of defense, so their opponents only dare to sabotage in cyberspace. Thank you for watching this video to the end. We hope you enjoyed it. Write in the comments what other interesting facts about the United States you know. You are on the Kairos Show channel. Goodbye.